When J.K. Rowling announced that there would be 7 Harry Potter books in total, it begged the question of whether or not Warner Brothers would actually turn the whole series into films. It all came down to numbers. As we've seen, just because a movie is based off of a series of books doesn't guarantee that all the installments will be adapted into films. I don't exactly see anyone rushing to film the sequel to Eragon. The same can be said for Lemony Snicket and The Golden Compass. But when you do the box office that the first Harry Potter movie did, a sequel will definitely be in the works, and this one came out a year later. First, let's take a look at the book. Sorcerer's Stone simply didn't call for a sequel. Unlike the later installments, it didn't end on a cliffhanger. It hinted at Lord Voldemort's ability to return, but aside from that, the evil was destroyed and Harry saved the school from certain doom at the hands of the demented Professor Quirrell. It had so much imagination and told such a rich story that by the time we wrapped it up, it almost seemed like a dream. I thought to myself, there's no way I just read something that great. It was truly one of those profound moments, leaving a permanent impact on how I viewed fantasy. And that's how Chamber of Secrets starts. Harry's back living with the miserable Dursleys, and because he hasn't gotten any mail from his friends, he assumes the whole thing at Hogwarts never happened. That's until he gets a visit from Dobby the House Elf, warning him to stay away from Hogwarts because of an impending doom that awaits him. He even goes as far as to get him in trouble with his Uncle Vernon, who puts bars in Harry's window to prevent him from leaving. Luckily, Ron Weasley and his twin brothers, George and Fred, come to Harry's rescue in their dad's flying car. It's a hilarious scene that's done to perfection in the film. We also get to see the Weasleys' home for the first time, the Burrow, which on film looks like a glorified treehouse. Throughout the series, we would visit the Burrow several times, as it pretty much becomes a place of comfort and refuge for the central characters. The second sign of trouble comes when, at platform 9 3/4, Harry and Ron can't go through the barrier to King's Cross Station. Rather than simply wait for the Weasleys to come back through, they decide to steal Mr. Weasley's car and fly it back to Hogwarts. In the movie, this scene is extended to make for more of a thrill ride, but in both the film and the book, it's pretty amusing to see the characters fumble about in the car as they try to make it work properly. Then, when the car lands, it gets in a tangle with a whomping willow, a tree with an attitude. The car drives off into the forest, but not before chucking the boys' luggage at them, and they get away with a few cuts and bruises. The confrontation also busts Ron's wand, which becomes an important subplot later on. They get pulled into Snape's office, who launches into a harangue because they were seen by several muggles. Snape wants nothing more than to expel the two of them, but Dumbledore intervenes. Now, if this were to happen at any other school, you bet your ass you'd be expelled. I mean, all they had to do was wait for the Weasleys to come back from the train station. This was a pretty dumbass move, but I have to admit, it made for an entertaining scene. This was the first book to introduce Gilderoy Lockhart, a cocky wizard who has authored several books boasting all of his heroic deeds. In the film, he's played by Kenneth Branagh. He's the guy that all the ladies pine for, but the guys just can't stand. To top it off, as punishment for stealing Mr. Weasley's car, Harry has to spend detention opening the guy's fan mail. Throughout the book, he uses Harry merely as a vehicle to propel his own fame to even greater heights, but we find out later that he isn't all that he says he is. This was also the first book that embellished Harry's ability to talk to snakes. In Sorcerer's Stone, there's a scene in the beginning where Harry accidentally lets a python loose at the zoo, but that's before he even meets Hagrid, and they never allude to it again. Chamber of Secrets explains that Harry is a parcel mouth, a rare gift that mainly Lord Voldemort commanded. In Chamber, Harry begins to hear voices through the castle, but doesn't understand where they're coming from until this revelation. One of my favorite scenes in the book that was left out of the film was Nearly Headless Nick's Death Day party. It's a completely standalone scene that bears no relevance to the rest of the plot, but it details some of Nick's backstory and why he was subjected to ridicule by his fellow ghost pals. I wasn't too upset when they left it out of the movie, as a lot of dedicated fans were. People forget, it costs money to make a movie, and when you have a scene that kind of dangles out in left field, it makes sense just to cut it all together. To be honest, regardless of how good this scene plays out in the book, I never really missed it on film. As the film goes on, the real drama starts when an unseen force starts paralyzing the students in the school halls. Like Sorcerer's Stone, Harry, Ron, and Hermione go through all kinds of adventures where they try to catch the culprit. During a Quidditch match, Harry gets attacked by a rogue bludger.
Harry's got himself a rogue bludger! That's been tampered with, that has!
Snape and Lockhart conduct an eventual dueling club where the students can learn to defend themselves.
Scared, Potter?
You wish.
Hermione conjures up Polyjuice Potion to change Harry's and Ron's identities. And then Harry comes into contact with a diary that he uses to travel back in time when the Chamber of Secrets was originally opened. There are a lot of twists and turns, and one of the things that made this installment so groundbreaking was, more so than the first book, it revisited a lot of loose ends and tied them all together by the last few chapters. We learned a little more about Voldemort's past, and we were treated to a really suspenseful battle where Harry faces death and fights a giant snake. It had that same mystical, profound quality that the first book had, but it was a little darker, there was more danger involved, and yet it managed to leave us in a feel-good mood. I'd say that it surpassed the original in almost every way. So when it comes to the film, you'd think that it would do the same thing as its movie counterpart, but for some reason the movie falls a little short. I can't put my finger on it, but it lacks some of the intensity that the book had. I'm not sure if it's because the main cast is still so young, or because it follows the book to the T. There are hardly any parts that are left out from the book. I think a big reason why it didn't quite live up to the expectation was, whereas in the first movie we were introduced to this whole world, in the sequel we aren't really given anything new. The castle, the forest, Hagrid's hut, we saw it all before. For some reason, the book was better able to reintroduce Harry's world and make it feel fresh. The film just kind of feels like a continuation of the first movie. It's still pretty damn good, but just not quite as memorable. As always, the cast is top-notch. Many people have noted that it's funny to see Ron and Harry go through puberty between the first two films. Today, Sorcerer's Stone feels weird because the characters' voices haven't matured yet. When you get to a year later in Chamber of Secrets, their voices are suddenly deeper. It adds to the realism, but the fact that it's a movie makes it more noticeable.
Hey, he's gone. Well, you can't expect him to run around all day, can you?
Ron, I should tell you, most muggles aren't accustomed to seeing a flying car.
Right.
It goes without saying that this would be Richard Harris's last performance as Professor Dumbledore. The other thing I'd like to comment on are the subtle similarities to another popular fantasy film that came out that same year. Yes, I'm talking about Peter Jackson's The Two Towers. Of course, most fantasy writers generally end up borrowing something from Tolkien's work because his Lord of the Rings trilogy is considered the granddaddy of modern fiction. It's funny that these two movies came out in the same year. They both have moving trees, they introduced a pair of very convincing digital characters, and they both had giant menacing spiders. Well, that last one is confusing. For those who haven't read the Rings books, Shelob the spider actually appears in The Two Towers. Because of the uneven pacing of the novels, Peter Jackson decided it would make more sense chronologically to move Shelob scenes to Return of the King. A wise choice, but I always wondered if this movie had something to do with that decision. Regardless, Chamber of Secrets is still an entertaining fantasy film that captivates and entertains. It's a lot of fun to return to this familiar world, and it still has several standout action sequences that are the main highlight of the film. This is another one that doesn't really lend itself to any bad scenes. If you're a Potterphile, you definitely need to check this one out. Oh wait, if you're a Potterphile, you probably already have. Over and over again.